Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, welcome to the fifth part of Applico's webinar series on the second screen. This week we're talking about the connected entertainment experience. So just as a recap, these are the subjects we've covered in the past. On week one, it was a basic overview of media consumption journey, how the second screen has come to be and what sort of effect it's going to have on entertainment. The second week got closer into the consumer experience with second screen, exploring things in more depth, leading into week three, which was driven largely around the types of categories of people and their interests and use cases for the second screen. Week four, discussing how second screen fits into the stack of entertainment components within the house, and specifically the living room, the traditional environment for consuming entertainment. And again, this week we're going to start to talk about understanding all of those influences in context outside of the home, where you're still engaging in entertainment experience, still have that companion screen or sometimes something running in the background that's going to inform the way you interact with the entertainment. So where is it going, and where are these environments outside of the home? We think there are four great places to start. And first, we'll talk a little bit about the connected stadium, thinking about real-time sporting and other events related to that, so maybe a concert or something. Parks and resorts, where you can move around and have lots of micro interactions that pertain to a broader and also the more specific interactions within the entertainment experience. Museums, where the user is sort of interacting with a series of content and sequence, and maybe or maybe not taking a role in guiding the course of interactions with all those experiences. And then finally, we'll take a look at theaters and other in-person, real-time, concrete and finite engagements, and understanding how you follow along in real time with the second screen. So first, taking a look at connected stadium, we see this as a major area of opportunity in the news recently. The 49ers new stadium has been making waves, and before that, the Brooklyn Nets new stadium in Brooklyn. But we'll take a look at where the connected stadium is today, and then maybe in the future where we see like really interesting opportunities. So today you can order food and purchase merchandise, and usually from lots of different parts of the stadium. Sometimes that's for just certain types of seats, the more premium seats. And you should be able to see in many stadiums up-to-date deals on merchandise, and stadiums can incentivize for the consumers what sort of things they should purchase based on inventory. And you can also sell other types of things like jerseys and stuff that you would buy from stores around the stadium experience. As shown in this image, there's also access to video. So that's things like in-game feeds from different angles, and also replays in some cases up to 30 seconds as you can in Brooklyn of replay time. You can also stay up to date with scores of other games, particularly in the playoffs. It's a really exciting, engaging way to feel connected to, let's say, the NBA as it's coming alive, or during March Madness. And in tune with that, there's still this social connection. So going back to the earlier webinar when we were talking about fantasy leagues, and we're talking about engaging with the other groups of fans who enjoy the same events as you can start to send messages. Sometimes if those messages are pertinent to the experience in the stadium, they can be displayed on the Jumbotron, and you can communicate with fans from all over the stadium. There's also, in many stadiums, seamless arrival and departure. So you can check in with the ticket on your phone, and you can start to see up-to-date traffic info. Sometimes also, let's say it's the Olympics and you're in a venue, you can also start to see on a map what else is going around near you that day, or maybe even at the same time. If we take a look at future stadiums, we can start to blow out all of those different experiences that we're seeing today. So instead of just being able to order food from your seat, you can start to locate nearby restaurants, and then maybe order food for after the game. Maybe you can get merchandise related to something that you saw in the store, either at a discount, or you can buy the same thing you just bought for your kids to wear while you're out of town on business and watching the same game they are. Stuff like that. You can also access video in the way that you can today, but maybe you can start to connect with other phones and get their perspective. So if you imagine that everybody sitting in the stadium we're watching probably has a device on them, you could start to pinpoint and get an exact angle, or maybe even live through better seats if you're in cheap seats. You can also probably, in the not so distant future, be able to rewind the entire game. So instead of just today's 30-second clip, you really might want to go through that goal in the first quarter, or you really might want to see how things came down at the end of halftime and go back and relive your favorite moments throughout the game, not to mention capture them and share them with the other friends you have who weren't as lucky as you were to be there in real time. You can also take a look at really high pressure situations, especially in sports. So Kobe Bryant gets an ankle injury and you don't know how serious it is. So maybe you're interested in the trainer cam in real time, or at least running that in the corner of your screen while you do your fantasy and everything else, just to follow along with the true richness of all the action that's happening. And stay up to date with other games, not just in terms of scores, but maybe even watching those camera angles from your favorite perspective within the stadium. You can also get really enriched news feeds that maybe or maybe not sponsored by entities like ESPN to display streaming video of all the other games in town. You can start to have richer social interactions, so real-time contests either by seating section, and we'll come back to that when we start to talk about the connected movie theater. You can start to pepper in trivia questions in a more engaging way to incentivize participation during lulls. You can have companion games. So if you're watching NASCAR, maybe you have a car racing fantasy game that you're playing in real time with your other friends who are watching the race. And you can move into curation of all of those different types of experiences. So during the game, if users are taking Instagram shots, or if they're capturing certain moments like the highlights very well curated, you could throw it up into a content management environment where other fans could go in at the end of the game, really have something to take with them about the highlights of that kind of experience, or the best of answers to trivia questions, or whatever the case may be. The arrival and departure component can start to get much more robust. So instead of just valet, we're looking at seamless payments for tickets and for cars and for any kind of upsell, not just specific transaction systems as there are today. So in other words, if you're in a stadium and you have a paperless ticket, you order food from your seat, you buy merchandise, and you get a seat upgrade, those are 4 different experiences that could have 4 different payment systems. From the perspective of somebody who would fund a connected stadium, the more data you can aggregate about somebody's spending patterns over the course of all of the different revenue channels you have in the environment, the better you'll be able to predict how to monetize the connected stadium experience in general. You can start to have tips to incentivize relationships between the consumer and the hot dog person or the valet. And you can start to monetize the maps better as well. So you can start to also see what friends are doing nearby after the game and meet up with them in a bar. You can start to see the flows of traffic outside the stadium and plan your route out of the stadium and maybe plan dinner according to that route. And you can start to see what concession stands are running low on food, what bathrooms have the shortest lines, and the fastest way out of the stadium itself at the end of the game. All these things sort of reduce the points of friction, increase the monetization, increase the engagement without really distracting the consumer from the main reason why they went, which is to watch the sporting event or watch the concert or what have you. So moving on from connected stadiums, we can take a look at parks and resorts. Within parks and resorts, there's a component of planning your trip and going about it. So here we basically have essentially a consumer-facing content management system where you can see a map of what's available, schedules of things that are happening, maybe take a look at wait times in real time. And in the case of Disneyland here, with the Fast Pass, you can use the integration with iOS 5 basically to have tickets display when you show up close to the attraction that you want to check in for. But Disney's really pushing the envelope with their parks and resorts. They're definitely the leader in the space. As you move into wearables, you can start to have uh, a more discrete or an experience that's running in the background, much more seamless and much more meaningful in terms of the behaviors people are performing, the level of personalization you're able to deliver without distracting from the experience of consuming, again, the primary experience. So concept of second screen, of course, from the first episode is you've got some sort of enveloping entertainment experience that you're paying the bulk amount of your money toward seeing, but you also have something that's the companion to it. Sometimes there is a screen involved, and sometimes if we're talking about the concept of second screen, it can be something that like this is running in the background. So a wristband like this could be used as a room key, could be used as a ticket, could be used to purchase condiments, or not condiments, but concessions and merchandise and whatever else. It could be used for your photo pass card. But on the back end for Disney, this information is really valuable because you've got everybody's spending behaviors, you've got time that they're spending in different areas, you've got their flows throughout the property. You can start to lump together groups of users and see who's traveling in a pack. If somebody's lost, you can reassociate them. And all those experiences enhance the magic of going to the Disneyland resort. So if we have a user we know has gone to the Magic Teacup ride 3 or 4 times in a row, we know that they might be in Alice in Wonderland, and we might start to send alerts to all of the characters walking around Disneyland that they might want to stop by and say hi to this customer, and that's sort of how you get a customer for life with that super, super personalized experience. Moving on from parks and resorts, we're getting into museums and self-guided entertainment. So you can take a museum like the Louvre in Paris that has 35,000 masterpieces and 652,000 square feet, and that could be easily like a 2-week endeavor to get through all of that kind of material. And chances are that there's going to be either some level of curation for each visitor or self-determined kind of tour that they'll take with whatever time they have to spend in the Louvre. Mobile is perfect for this because you could plan for it in advance. You could just download a guide instead, or you can start to get to know the content that you're experiencing as you go through the resort, not to mention capture and share that experience with anyone else with whom you share tastes in art. So we like this example of the museum because we think it's the real crossroads between a traditional entertainment experience in its rawest form. You can hide or involve the mobile experience to any degree, and there is a truly isolated moment where it's just the physical world the way you always would have experienced a museum, but it's also a window into the most innovative experience possible. So since the content itself, in the case of the Louvre, is static, it's the same images on the wall as long as the collection or an exhibit runs, the room to make the most out of each person's engagement with that is really limitless. Versus something like a sporting event where it's unfolding in real time as people are there, and you can do your best to sort of provide a secondary experience to be engaging with the user. So beyond just the art exhibit, we can start to look at who attends the Louvre. And you've got language speakers of virtually every language. It might be the most famous art museum in the world, and you want everybody to be able to make the most out of their time there. You can start to implement geolocators and direct people to different sections of the museum to get a hyper-curated tour or to make the most out of a specific time frame, or even to meet up with large groups if you get split up without having to make obnoxious phone calls within the museum. And again, all these little micro experiences point to a general trend that this form of entertainment is going to be extremely sophisticated, and we're moving toward hyper personalized environments here. So there are going to be so many more permutations of the way somebody experiences museum like this than there are with the ways people experience a sporting event or concert, or even parks and resorts. So just as an example, this is the Tate Modern in London, but in San Francisco, the Exploratorium plans on releasing features like this that will allow you to bookmark what you're looking at to come back later, save your favorites. MoMA in New York allows users to recommend playlists for each other to listen to certain types of music as they go through exhibits and start to have what essentially would have been like a Web 2.0 social interaction instead in the physical environment here with mobile. And all of those have started to transform the relationship between museums and the public. Start to see theme visits based on experience and interest and timeframes, as we mentioned before. You start to have hyper curated and recommended experiences for the amount of time people select while they're there based on what exhibits are flowing through, what sort of playlists people are listening to, how much time on average a museum patron spends looking at one piece versus another piece. And you can start to really, really inform the most effective, engaging experiences there. And then moving into movie theaters, here we're reimagining, in many cases, classic evergreen titles. And this is just a perfect case. Disney, again, to really put the spotlight on Disney twice, does a really amazing job of creating classic, enduring stories and characters and properties. And those turn out well for museum rides and for merchandise. And if you sort of apply that way of thinking of understanding what works, getting an audience that's an audience for life that's going to watch the same movie over and over, you can start to use the technology to layer in and differentiate the experience. So here we're not talking about just having an app to play while you're watching the same content. We're talking about influencing the content. We're talking about splitting the audience down the middle of the theater and having the left side play against the right side. We're talking about showing up with your family and having your family compete in ongoing games against other families. We're talking about individuals and point systems. We're talking about different types of micro interactions, everything from brick breaker games to trivia to spot the difference from this frame to the next. And all of those, again, sort of enrich the engagement between the brand, the property itself, and making sure that those fans for life are continuing to explore the things they know and love in more meaningful ways. Not to mention that this sort of experience is a really minor investment. So you might take a movie that had a $100 million production investment, and then it had a portion of that toward marketing, and then the film was released, it grossed some money, and then it was released abroad and grossed some more money, and then it went to networks or to DVD or to iTunes and made a little bit more money, and then the theme park ride that made a little bit more money, and so forth. This is really kind of the final thing because you can keep iterating, you can keep adding new levels, you can keep adding new experiences, you can add scenes down the road for really minor investment, but again, sort of bring everyone with you throughout. And taking a look at an interesting use case for us, which is Viclone, and sometimes bring this back into the live events, the sports, the concerts, and again, capture those moments in real time while you're there and use them to deliver an enduring experience thereafter. So for those who are unfamiliar, Viclone lets users create movies from using multiple smartphone angles in the same venue. So it has an algorithm that detects what time it is, very specifically where people are located, which way they're oriented, and then uses audio cues to synchronize all of the frames of the video, which means if you are watching a show at Coachella and there are 500 other audience members who are filming their experience on Viclone, you can have a real-time photo montage from all 500 different angles of the same set. And you can start to mix and match them in whatever way you want, which allows really hardcore music fans in particular, but also others. If you think ahead for the World Cup in Brazil, there will be a lot of attendees to those World Cup games who are saving up for a month or 2 months of their salary in order to buy one ticket. That's going to be a once-in-a-lifetime experience for them. if this technology were more accessible for people across devices, then that game that one person goes to experience for the World Cup can be passed down for generations and can be a really special moment. So again, considering all of these different options, we want to help the forward thinkers in entertainment space start to understand what interaction models have been proven in the context of the TV to the iPad or the TV to the phone, figure out what's engaging, what monetizes, and start to apply those to the way that anybody experiences entertainment in any environment. Thanks again for sticking with us for the fifth and final installment. We hope that you come back and revisit all the other videos and engage in the conversation with us. We're, of course, always open and encouraging to others in various industries to come to Applico and start to brainstorm these things together. And we appreciate everybody's support along the way. So thanks again.